time, but I don't like to cut people off when we're on a roll, so I'm now going to welcome representatives from the National Road Freighters Association. I'm thinking, what's coming out of that bag, Rod? Right, okay.
Your truck model.
Okay. All right, can I now welcome representatives from the National Road Freighters Association, and if you could please give your name and the capacity in which you appear today.
Craig Forsyth, and as a board member of the Road Freighters Association and as an owner-operator myself.
Thank you.
And Rod Hannifey, I'm now the recently elected president of the National Road Freighters Association, and I'm an employed driver, which is a little bit unusual for our association, and most of my comments are specifically aimed in affecting employed drivers on the road.
Mr. Hannifey, knowing your vast experience in this industry, nothing surprises me what hat you have on each time we talk. So congratulations on your election to greater office.
Thank you.
And I just want to pass this on to the National Road Freighters Association. I want to thank you guys for your support, and of course your previous past president, Mr. Gordon McKinlay, who reached out very early in the piece, and thank you for the ongoing conversation that we do have. Now, I'm going to give you the opportunity to make an opening statement before we go to questions. If you want to take longer on the statement, that cuts out question time. That doesn't worry me. I want you to get everything on the record you need to get on, okay?
Understand.
Mr. Hannifey, fire away.
So I have sent a copy of this document to you yesterday, made it available because I knew that we had a short time frame and I didn't think I'd get through it all. I'll quickly raise the issues that are on it. I did attend the inquiry initially. I put in a written submission, attended, and mate, you did say that NRFA have been supportive. I believe that we have been the biggest single contributing group. You've certainly had some very big companies that have contributed and government organisations, but I believe we would be the largest number of conglomerate people that have contributed to this inquiry. So we do believe that there is a need for something to change. I'll offer 5 things that will make the road safer for all, and there are 3 things that will change the industry for better. According to a 2014 work cover report, trucks are only at fault in 6% of fatalities on Australian roads, yet over 700 truck drivers are involved in such crashes, and though not at fault, they are, it seems, too often initially dealt with as criminals and then left to fend for themselves, even if acquitted of any blame. Now, in the media, we are continually held unjustly liable and as overrepresented in those crashes. Nothing's been done to change this, and then those drivers are not only treated badly, but they're hung out to dry afterwards, perhaps affecting them for the rest of their lives. But if we're not at fault, then why has nothing been done to rectify not only the abuse of truck drivers, but to educate the people who are the problem, those at fault, the car drivers? Until there is some much improved education of car drivers about sharing the road with trucks, preferably starting in school, but at the absolute latest at time of learning and licensing, this ongoing tragedy and loss of lives will continue. I have raised this in many forums and for many years, and I hope you can achieve this where I have been unable to alone. I've offered the following videos that we did through White Line Television and with funding from NHVR to every state road authority in Australia. One of them came back and said, no thanks, we don't need them. The others couldn't even bother responding. Now there's 9 one-minute videos. I don't believe that that's too much to ask of someone getting a licence to be on the road for the next 60 years. We know that if you're in a trucking family, you spend time with dad and you go out and you learn it and you have an understanding of trucks. But at the moment, someone goes and gets their licence. There is very little questions. There's now 2, when there wasn't even that before I complained last time about the fact that there was no education. And some kid will go out and pull straight out in front of 68 tonne B double and expect it to stop simply because he can pull out in front of it. We run over him, he's dead. We're stricken for the rest of our lives because we see that in our nightmares every night, and that is never recognised anywhere, and that education must improve. To me, that is the single biggest factor affecting my life and safety on the road. The second one is the road. The road is our workplace, yet it's not recognised as such. If I come in here, we have to be inducted, we have to go through a process that allows me access to this building, and then you've got to be trained in any hazards that are in this building. If I go to a work site, I'm told there are forklifts, you must do this, you must walk on the pathway. And yet we are letting young people get out on the roads with no education of trucks, and then when they get out there, they make those mistakes. That leads to the second problem, is that the roads are owned by the authorities. Now, if I'm normally given a safe workplace in which to operate, why aren't the roads brought up to a standard? Why is that not recognised as my workplace? So the authorities are failing in not educating other road users, but they are also failing from where I sit, bouncing up and down the bloody highway, trying to hang on for grim death, trying to manage my fatigue, and then they do not build the road to a proper standard. They don't maintain it to a standard. And as an example, mate, there's a bit of road just south of Yallarbin. Now, it is a road like that. It is undulating. It's taken me over 5 years to get that bit of road fixed. I have rang, I have begged, I have emailed, I haven't abused, because that doesn't really help. I've gone back and said, will you get an engineer to have a look at this bit of road? I can get the wheels off the ground in a fully loaded B-double. That scares me. I've told them I simply refuse to drive on that side of the road if there is no other traffic coming. And luckily you can see around the corner it's safe, and I'll travel on the wrong side of the road. I'll be straight up with you about it. Now, they've finally gone out there and said, yes, we've had an engineer. Yes, it's a problem. I've said, look at the skid marks where someone has hit this bump because he didn't know it's there. I know it's there. I'm careful of it. But I said, some bloke's hit this, gone off the road, may have died, don't know what happened. I'm not there every minute of the day. And then they said, oh, we haven't got any money. Now, we have to take that to them. We have to make them aware of those problems. I've tried to get drivers to ring up about these things, but they say, well, no one will listen. No one does anything. But that's where I live. I spend 200,000 kilometres a year on those roads. There is no national standard for our roads. There is nothing where I can say, and I've had this argument with the road authority, there's this bit of undulating road, but it's not broken. And on a car, it's not that bad. You just float over it, oh, there's a bit of a bump. With me, that impact comes into the truck. I've had drivers say, why do we have to have roadworthy trucks when the trucks aren't roadworthy? That impact then comes into me. I want to be able to walk when I'm 70. And then it affects my fatigue because I'm forever stressed trying to keep the truck on the road, not running into the car coming the other way who's weaving over the bumps. Then it goes back into the road. Now, we as an industry are forever blamed for damaging the roads, yet for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. The road's good, we drive along it like this. But now, when the roads fail, no one is responsible to fix them. When they go out and do a half-assed patch and it fails 2 days later and they come back and do it again, we are continually paying. We are not getting value for money for our roads. As my workplace, they're not doing their job, and I would like your support for a national road standard. That means I carry my 2 metre bit of pipe, I lay it on the road, there's more than a certain amount of gap under it, it's a national highway, it's got to be fixed within a certain amount of time. We don't expect them to be there tomorrow because we know it costs money, but there must be something there to force it to happen. They've just built a new overtaking lane south of Peak Hill. So they went out, they finished it, within 3 weeks it had failed. In the 3 months since that's happened, they've torn it up twice. Now, we're getting blamed, we're getting delayed with the roadworks, there are hazards involved in going through those roadworks, but someone's now been paid 3 times to do that same bit of roadwork. I have a problem with that. Next is a national truck rest area strategy. Now, you spoke of this to the Department of Infrastructure. I thank you for raising it. I've had a conversation with them on the phone. They have agreed that there is some funding perhaps available to look at the green reflector marking of informal truck bays. They've told me that they're going to the next TIC meeting and that they will raise it there. And the fact that we don't have enough rest areas means that, one, we have tired truck drivers. There are no toilets. There is no shade. There are no facilities. RMS have just done a section of road from Boggabilla south of there, 40 kilometres of road. I rang them when they started. I rang them during the work. I rang them when they finished. I said, please, will you guarantee me we don't lose any rest areas? Oh, we'll have a look at that. They'd finished by tearing up 40 kilometres of highway adjacent to the new road that we could have had for free parking bays. And I believe that's criminal negligence. We went from 28 spaces back to 6. When I rang them at the start, I rang them during the work, I rang them at the finish, and now they've just said, sorry.
From 28 to 6, I will cut in, Mr. Hannifey, so I don't lose this. So from 28 rest areas to 6.
28 spaces,
Oh,
not 28 rest areas.
Oh, to 6 spaces.
Yes.
Over 40 kilometres.
Yes.
Oh, right, that's what it was.
Where they spent millions
That
of
makes more
dollars.
sense. Okay. So what you're saying, and quite right, because it used to annoy the living daylights out of me every time I went up the Great Northern Highway and they put a new bit in, or the Norwest Coastal Highway, whereas all that perfectly bitumen for a rest, if you're coming in at 5 or 10k an hour, and all they had to do was give you plough a little bit of trees away and make a little bit of a dirt entrance so you could come in off the brand new road onto the old bit, give you a kilometre there, so there's half a dozen triples can get in or whatever,
Yep.
a couple of overwidths, and then do another cutting out.
Yep.
And they could have done that 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 times.
Yep.
I was going to say bugger all, but that's not politically correct. Next to nothing costs.
That's right.
there's
Well,
a
they would have
dozer on
saved
site.
money.
Yeah.
Instead of tearing up that bit of road, which they pay contractors to cart it away and then tidy it up,
Yeah.
they would have saved money.
Yep.
We would have had rest areas at absolutely no cost, because the little bit of time they spent doing that bit you speak of would have been recovered by not tearing up that bit of road.
Yeah.
And mate, the last one on rest areas, and I've submitted a copy of that strategy, is the Pacific Highway. Now, when they started on the Pacific Highway 15 years ago, we didn't have enough rest areas then. Every town that's been bypassed, we've lost more. And I said, you're aware of the change in industry that we now do changeovers. We waited 30 years to get a changeover facility at Tarcutta. At midnight now, it's an absolute madhouse. It's not big enough. It doesn't do the job. It was badly designed and we weren't consulted. I said to them, when you do the Pacific, which is perhaps now arguably the best road in Australia, and the road itself is fantastic, but I said, you must put in a changeover facility. Our industry has changed, so a bloke doesn't have to run around Sydney all day, then drive all night to go to Brisbane and then unload and reload and go back. We put a bloke in the truck in Sydney, he drives up. We used to do changeovers at Clybucca. That was a madhouse. It was a 100k zone. It was an absolute risk to life and limb of those operating. They've spent millions upon millions of dollars on that Pacific Highway. There is not a changeover facility. There is nothing. Blokes, and now that we've gone away from Clybucca, they've dropped the speed limit 80 kilometres an hour, and 15 or 20 trucks are trying to get into a single space at Kempsey of a night to do a changeover.
And just while you're talking, I'm making note, because when the department comes here today, now they might put it on the states, but we'll ask them, because as I'd said when the Engineers Australia were here, what consultation is there with the men and women who hold the steering wheel?
Not enough.
Yeah.
And that is one of my
I doubt
points.
there's any.
Yes.
Yeah. Keep going.
So, point number 4, lack of flexibility in logbooks. We know that, you've heard it. The penalties for nothing have to do with road safety.
Yep.
There is an issue there, and I am asking in a separate document we'll come to, of the removal of police powers to police the heavy vehicle national law. I will come back to that. We are forcing drivers out who for 30 years have driven when they were fit, slept when they were tired, and I've had blokes come to me and say, I've never struggled in the last 30 years as hard as I do now to be safe and compliant, because I do hope the heavy vehicle national law review will improve some of that. Lastly, training. We now teach car drivers to pass the test. That's all we do. Once they're on the road, they're out of their hair, they're forgotten.
Yeah.
That is now coming into the trucking industry. The day we started with autos in trucks, we are now putting car drivers into trucks. You're aware of the problem with overseas people, and I have no inference of them coming here and having a job as long as they are trained to the same standard as we are, because I want them safe and I want me safe. And I want to get home every night I go out on that road. There must be something done for training. There must be either a level standard. Are you aware of the MELT program in Canada?
No.
They've now instituted, there was a major bus crash, a truck crashed into a bus and killed 16 young people in a hockey team. They now have 127 hours mandatory training. There is a large cost, but the applicant standard has lifted to meet that, whereas at the moment we are putting bums in seats.
Yep.
And that means those people coming towards me may have only got their licence yesterday, as I heard the gentleman say this morning. You know, you've got to give me my licence now because I'm heading to Melbourne on Sunday night. That's got to change. The 3 things that will change the industry is removal of police powers. Now, NHVR is saying that their on-road enforcement is aimed at education. We agree with that. If you make the same mistake 3 times, you get a ticket, you deserve the ticket. But police will come out, they will knock you off for leaving one date off your page, drive away thinking they've solved road safety. That bloke can't feed his family for that week. There is a separate document in those papers I've given you. I've had many people say they support it, and this is not against the police. This is saying they are not trained to the same level as NHVR officers. They are not fully aware of transport law. And whilst ever they come out and knock us off for some, excuse me, piss-ass thing that has nothing whatsoever to do with road safety,
Yep.
they are not solving the problem, they are increasing the problem. That bloke then can't feed his family that week. He's got another bill because all he went to do was to go to work and be home safe. And that is affecting also mental health in our industry. Second one is chain of responsibility. Marvellous concept, doesn't work. We're the ones swinging at the end of the chain. No one further up the chain is being targeted. I think there's only been one application in Queensland, 2 in New South Wales, and the Yanks looked at that chain of responsibility saying, oh, here's this, this is good, this will spread it up. But at the moment, the driver gets it. Bang, 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 bang. No one else gets into the chain, and we're still the last party. And the last one I will leave you with is the way that we are treated for our living away from home allowance. 3 years ago, the ATA tried to knock our allowance in half. The industry rallied and said, nick off, why are you treating us this way? I asked you, Senator Stirl, how do you believe you get treated compared to us?
Oh,
we are not allowed to claim $27 for tea time because we worked all night and want to have a big breakfast.
That's right.
And now we've got to produce all these receipts and prove that I spent $27 for breakfast, but I can't spend it for tea. I don't think that's fair and reasonable. I think that's just another impost on our industry. And as I say, I've written this document, and at the end, mate, I'll leave you with 2 points, and then we'll give Craig a minute. Sorry, mate.
We're all done, yeah.
I thank you for the opportunity to outline these issues and sincerely hope this inquiry can bring pressure to bear to see truck drivers' lives made safer on the road. I am concerned that truckies are not recognised for the lives they save in driving for others every day. We get blamed, we don't get recognised for the fact that I look and I watch that motorist because I know he doesn't understand trucks, and I will try and anticipate and prevent that accident and save his life from doing something stupid. Sometimes they can be just too stupid and too quick and you can't do it.
Yep.
But we are blamed for the deaths, we are blamed for the road damage, we are harassed to the point of abuse by authorities for things that have nothing whatsoever to do with road safety, and yet we are never recognised for the lives that we save.
Extraordinary point, and not only that, we get the same amount of demerit points as someone running around town doing 10,000k a day.
We do get 2 more in New South Wales, and that was thanks to our local member Dawn Fardell. But again, for someone in a car to do 20,000 kilometres a year, and I went to a New South Wales Centre for Road Safety meeting in Dubbo last Wednesday. One of the first things, and one of the only things, speaking about heavy vehicles, other than saying we need more technology, was that we are overrepresented in crashes. We're responsible for 17%. The bloke did backtrack and say that doesn't include fault, but using those figures maligns us and doesn't recognise the fact that we do 200,000 kilometres a year.
Yeah. That's the single operator.
Yes, exactly
We
right.
start 2-up teams and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Hannifey. We'll come back to questions there. Mr. Forsyth, your turn.
I'd just like to touch on the education, not only of truck drivers, but car drivers as well. I went to Melbourne over the Easter weekend, and I was horrified of the road conditions from not only our own industry, but car drivers as well, of how uneducated we are, or have become. We also have an industry now where anyone can basically get a truck licence. You can go and pay your money, and we know that because you've been through that before. But we're now getting larger vehicles on the road, and there's no education on what to do with those vehicles. We also are running out of areas to stop, like Rod said on the renewal, they're cutting areas out to rest, yet the vehicles are longer. We're running AB triples up and down the Newell now, and parks they'll bypass soon. So they'll basically be running, Brisbane, Melbourne, and we've got no more areas. But with the education side, we don't have any tier or accreditation structures for the level of competency you need to have as an operator. So I can spend 6 months driving a fridge van around Melbourne, and then I can go and buy a truck and a widening trailer and think I know how to do oversized freight. There's no accreditation for me. I'm not licensed to do that. It takes years of experience, and as Mr. Mitchell said, we're not even a profession.
Yeah.
Yet, you know, when we're driving down the road, we're taking on more than what a pilot is with what we need to do. So, you know, we don't have auto steer or autopilot. We're constantly watching out for the people that we're going to run over and looking so far ahead of what we do. Yet we're not a profession, and that's wrong. I actually obtained a Cert 3 in driving operations many years ago. I flatly refused to do the course, flatly refused, and I still got one in the mail.
They gave it to you.
They gave it to me anyway. Even though I refused to do it and I held higher qualifications anyway. It was just a scam to give to the training operator and the company that I was being employed by at the time.
I see. Yeah.
So I started, it was only a seasonal job, and I ended up with a Cert 3, which I hold no value to anyway. But I didn't do anything to obtain that thing, but money was spent.
Well, there was a tick and flick. There was a couple of names, there it is, meet it, and you get some money.
Yeah.
We saw
That money at the time could have been spent employing a young driver to bring him into the industry and let some people train him, not just say, do you know how to tie a load on and just get a certificate for saying I can. Not demonstrate how to do it, you know. So we've dumbed down the industry to a point now where people will go and just do whatever they're asked. And there are still those employers that prey on that he's just here for a wage, he doesn't know any better, so they can push. And they push hard still.
Yep.
So we need to train people to be able, first thing, to say no. Like, no, I'm not breaking the law to basically to make your employer more money.
All right, can I ask you a few questions then, Mr. Forsyth? And I've got some for you too, Mr. Hannifey. Sorry, have you finished?
Yeah.
Oh, good, okay. So is it the view of the National Road Freighters Association that it should be harder to get a truck licence?
You have to have one of two choices. Either we make it so hard to get into the industry and it costs so much we are going to struggle then to get people in, and we know that's a problem now. We don't have people who are looking to this industry. We use the young ones because they can't get into the truck. Your insurance problems, we're losing the old ones, like the rest of the Australian demographic. They're being forced out by those fines. Where do we get the truck drivers? They're sort of heading towards this, we're going to have all these autonomous trucks and we won't need you soon.
Not in our lifetime, though.
It is, mate. But I tell you what, if they go and start spending money on fixing highways for autonomous trucks, I'm going to be standing there screaming at the top of my lungs, why couldn't you fix them for us? If it's good enough to fix it for a truck, why can't you fix it for me?
For an electric vehicle, yeah.
And that's why we need a national road standard. We're going backwards in rest areas. We believe there must be something done to improve the level of training or the level of licensing, whether you do all of that before you get your license, or whether you get a license, then you go to a company that then accredits you to the next level to go up and down the highway, that gives you those skills for your logbook, for your load restraint, for managing your fatigue. I don't have the answer, and I know it's not a simple fix, but I know something must be done to improve the safety, not only of truck drivers, but of all those on the road.
Sure. Now, there's two parts to that, licensing and training. Firstly, training, this community has taken a fair bit of evidence. The training industry's had a gutsful of it.
Yep.
Absolutely, they've had a gutsful.
They're being driven down,
Yeah, it's being driven down, and it's just the rat bags, just the fly-by-nighters are having a ball. No one's policing. People are employing these people on the road. I myself asked the question, if I had $300,000 or $500,000 worth of unit on the road, I'd want to make sure it was the best possible driver I can have. Unfortunately, not everyone thinks like us. We know that. So in terms of the NRFA, who should pay for the training? Should it be...
Companies have been a bit short-sighted where they've been happy to steal them from someone else.
Yes.
We have a national company, Simon National Carriers, and they have a training program, but their trucks run at 90 kilometres an hour and they have Volvos. And I've spoken to David Simon and I said, how do you feel about training the rest of the industry? Because blokes go there, they say, oh, look, you've helped me, you've taught me, I've got a licence, I've got all these skills, but now I'm off to drive a Kenworth at 105.
That's right.
And he said, I would rather train them so that when they're coming towards me, they're skilled and I know that's better, but he's bearing that cost. Now, that's not fair on him. It either has to be a national scheme, so it's levelled, Otherwise, if we have something where Craig starts his own training program and does all these drivers, but everybody else comes and steals them, why should he pay that? And then he'll go broke because he's doing the training. So I believe there must be a national scheme with national accreditation. I think like with the car drivers, we've probably got to lift that a bit, at least to be aware of trucks. But with us, it's not just getting a licence. That doesn't mean you can head to Melbourne or to Perth tomorrow. And we know that people are sent out without that knowledge or skill base. And whether you drive fridges, tippers, tankers, oversize, each has its own specific requirements. And whether you have a course that covers much of that, it's going to be very expensive. Or whether you get your licence and then must be indoctrinated in a company or enshrined to them, that MELT program in Canada, you can pay for it yourself. It is very comprehensive. Or you can get a company to sponsor you, but then you must stay with them for 2 years to give that money back to the company. That spreads the cost. And how else do you do that? I don't have that answer, I'm sorry.
Sure, no, that's fair enough. And I'll just highlight this too.
We have training schemes for apprentice. If you want to become a carpenter and you're an employer, you can go and get funding to put on an apprentice. So that should be open to the industry as well. But what do we employ somebody as to do that? And with the sustainable rates, like how do operators pay for it if they're running on such tight margins as it is? So, you know, it's very difficult for anyone with 3 or 4 trucks to go and find, particularly interstate, how do you train someone when you've got to sleep in the truck? So if I've got to put someone on with me in Brisbane and we're going to Melbourne, I've got this much bed space.
Yeah.
You know, I can't even sleep in that with my wife. So why would I take another bloke in there with me?
Well,
you can't, if you're training, you
question,
can't. If you're training someone, you can't 2-up drive. Like, it's not, you know.
You can't go to sleep and let them do it because they haven't got the skills. That's why you're with them in the first place.
No.
But to carry them on that distance, you know, is hard. And I'd love to take someone to learn the industry, but in a capacity, I've only got 1 truck.
Sure.
And I do such varied work that I don't even know where I'm going to end up half the time. So you can't book motels to stay in or things like that.
No, that's right. But it is comforting to know that there are many people out there who do have the ability to train people, who want to train people. And of course, but what irks them a lot of it is there's a number of things. One is you see money being thrown around this nation in training programs like confetti, just thrown around. Let's not forget we are 8 to 9% of GDP, the road transport industry. We're not tiny. But also that our standards, I believe, are not fit for purpose. And this, we've had this conversation with many transport operators and drivers and all that. And you think in this nation, you can go out there and you can get your a HC, and then you can go along a year later or whatever it is and get your MC. And then, you know, I don't know if you know this, but you can get your MC. Don't ever use it. Don't ever even think about putting the key in the ignition. 12 months later, then you can go get your Cert 4, train the trainer, and you can be a trainer.
And
how's
you can
that,
drive something at 100.
How the hell is some peanut like that going to teach someone, a young kid coming through, loading, load restraint, basic things? We've still got to change tyres. We've still got to make sure the load's okay. We've still got to do bits and pieces. We get air leaks. We can't all sit on the side of the road waiting for Bridgestone or Goodyear to get there to change a flat, all this sort of stuff. So there's that frustration too, which is coming through. Look, I do want to ask you, because I'm mindful of the time that we are running short, but now, I had the privilege of being invited up to, where did I go? Rocky, a couple of years ago at your one of your AGMs. I don't know if you were there, Mr. Forsyth. No. Okay, and I was presented, the NRFA have done a heck of a lot of work on licensing and, now hang on, I get this right. What it comes down to, the ridiculous charges of licensing a prime mover. If you pull one trailer, it's 14,000, start road training, what are we up to now? 18 or 9, whatever it is. And the National Road Fronters have done a real heap of body of work around user pay on the fuel. Are you guys able to speak about that?
I'm not aware of that.
Oh, okay.
Very quickly, obviously, they're looking at mass distance charging. Now, they've instituted a program, I think it's in California. There is one state in America that's looking at mass distance charging. The concern that we have is that in doing that, if you've got a majority of trucks running the Hume Highway every night, then those trucks are using that road, you put that money into that road, that's already a good road. What happens when he wants to go to the middle of bugger all in the middle of nowhere on a dirt road that currently doesn't have funding?
Yeah.
How do we get that to balance it out? Now, we know the industry cross-subsidises some things. like you were talking earlier about the farmers, and I've certainly had concerns raised about those running on farm rego.
Yeah.
And the thing was, at least in the past, you could see primary producer rego. Now, since NHVR has taken that over, those plates have disappeared, and now you don't know who is running on primary producer rego, and he's running beside you paying a fifth or a sixth of your rego and competing with you for the same work. We believe that the fuel-based charge, because the more weight that you carry, the more distance that you cover, then the more fuel that you use. Therefore, we are quite prepared to pay what we believe we have to contribute to the roads. But we've also discussed the roads aren't just there for us. The rail industry operates on its own rails. Now, they have their own problems, and you discussed them earlier, but they don't share those rails with anybody else. The roads are there for you to go and visit grandma or for you to go and visit your family. We share those roads, but we are charged with the whole cost of repairing them. They are now trying to pull that forward and charge us for what they're going to do, not what they've done. And you've only got to look at the Sydney Harbour Tunnel, the North Connects Tunnel. We had a driver who is diagnosed as claustrophobic. He cannot drive into a tunnel if he can't see the end. They rang RTA and said, can we get an exemption for this driver? He's been on the road 20 years, he's safe and he's efficient, but he can't go in there. We've got a medical certificate. You know what they were told?
No.
Stiff shit.
You know, isn't that terrible? Because I did the North Connects a couple of weeks ago, and the first thing I thought was, that's not a lot of height in that.
But you look now, you come into Sydney, you've got nothing from Pheasant's Nest to Wyong.
Yeah.
Because you can't now divert away from that tunnel to go to a servo to get a coffee because you're buggered and you're feeling tired.
I did it.
What if you've eaten something at Pheasant's Nest and you need to go to the loo? Where do you go now? Now, I fought tooth and nail to keep that little rest area right at the bottom of the Newcastle Road, where you used to come out at the end of the major highway there. There was a little bit underneath the bridge, and they were going to take that away when they did that tunnel. And I said, if you take that away, we've got nowhere to stop. I've gone into Sydney, I've gone to your place, I've loaded, I've put my load of steel on. I've got nowhere now to check that till I get to Wyong. What if a piece of timber moves or the chain comes loose?
Yeah.
Where do we do that? The last thing I'll leave you with on that is, in the major capital cities now, we're being even forced out of industrial areas. We used to go to Sydney, park in the street, you'd be there during the night, you'd get up in the morning, Wisdom Business Open, you'd go in and unload, and then you'd go off and load again. Now, there are so many restrictions. We've just lost a big parking area in Melbourne under the Balti Bridge.
Yeah.
Used to be 20-odd B-double spaces
I heard about
there.
that last week.
That's gone too. Where did they replace that? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing's been done about it.
That's right.
So, with the fuel-based charge, we believe that's a fairer system. How they ever bring in this mass distance charging and how they make it fair and how they operate and fix those roads in the community, because we know that 85% of roads are operated by local government and they don't have the funding stream. So we believe the fuel-based tax is the best way to go at this stage.
So have you had an opportunity to stick that under some bureaucrats' nose?
Look, we certainly tried, but then there was meant to be a trial of that mass distance charging. It's gone on and on for years, and I believe there's currently a trial where they've asked people to participate. I don't know how many have, and I haven't heard any results from that as yet. And it does depend on which side of the industry you're on. If you're a multinational that runs 57 trucks a night down the Hume, well, you don't mind because you know the Hume's done and it's a good road and you're happy. But as soon as you start running out to some farmer's property in the middle of nowhere, where is that funding going to come from that one truck? Is he going to have to pay $57 a kilometre to get that road fixed to go and deliver the tractor to the farm or pick up his load of grain? And we're concerned that all it will do is put another impost on our industry that will make it harder for us to service the community. And we are a service industry, and we happily carry Australia on our backs, and that's what we want to do. And years ago it was said that the Australian economy rode on the back of the sheep. That's changed. Now it's on the back of a prime mover. And all we want is a fair go to be able to do that service for the people of Australia. And at the moment, I don't think we're getting it.
On a lighter note, I remember having a sticker saying truckies carry Australia, and then on the other side of the trailer it had truckies are bloody sick of carrying Australia. But anyway, that was the 80s. Senator McDonald, have you got some questions of the National Road Freighters?
No, Senator Sterle, I've been listening intently, but I'll leave that in your capable hands.
Thank you very much. And I do want to just touch on, I'm sorry about the time, and thank you very much for making the effort, Mr. Hannifey and Mr. Forsyth. But just a little thing about that, and I do, because we took evidence from Glyn Castanelli down in Melbourne, and the way he was treated was absolutely criminal, and it was abysmal when a car was on the wrong side of the road and pranged into him, and he was the one hauled over the coals, then thrown in by the coppers.
Yep, that example in that first
Yeah,
part.
no,
of the
absolutely. I'm well aware of it, and I remember when Glyn rang me the night it happened, and the way he was treated by Channel 7, there's always the trucks running into cars and trying to kill people.
Yep.
So I'm very well aware of that one. That one's not lost, Mr. Hannifey. Mr. Forsyth, thank you very much. Guys, please travel safely. Thank you so much. Just on the record, Rod, I'm coming, mate.
Absolutely,
But
I won't let you forget.
We're waiting for the new banger, and it's after the Brisbane Truck Show, I think you told me, wasn't it?
Hope so, mate.
That's
Yeah.
if your wings fixed up by then, mate.
Yes.
All right, I will be there.
Thanks, mate.
Okay, thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Now, I will call our next witnesses, Prosecutor.